Terrifying real footage of a group of men following a girl home.
Can't fucking open the damn door.
This is 46-year-old Paris Oda, pictured with his family before authorities found all 5 of them dead on Sunday. But now this chiropractor is accused of stabbing his entire family before turning the blade on himself in Hawaii's second worst mass unaliving in modern history. Only second to the Xerox killing in 1997 that unalived 7 people. Authorities received an anonymous 911 call around 8:30 a.m., but when officers arrived, no one answered the door. Police returned around 9:15 a.m. and found all 5 family members deceased. Police said in a press conference Oda had no history of violence or criminal history, and they are looking into the motive. Employees of Oda say he loved his family very much, and they can't imagine what drove him to carry out such a horrific crime. They say he would wake up early and make his kids breakfast and prepare their lunches for school every day. Police reiterate this is an ongoing investigation, and anyone with information is being asked to contact the Manoa, Hawaii Police Department.
This girl killed her mother in a very brutal way, and whatever you do, don't look up the picture. This horrific incident happened at a family's home in Istanbul, Turkey on May 24th, 2021. 35-year-old Tuksi Sayin, who was on the left, murdered her 67-year-old mother, named Selvia Palabiak, who was on the right. Tuksi Sayin was said to have flown into a rage after her mother refused to sign the apartment over to her. The pair had reportedly been arguing for some time about gaining ownership of the mother's home, and eventually the argument heated up and turned into something truly disturbing. It is said at this moment Tuksi had enough and allegedly murdered her mother before dragging her lifeless body into the bathroom and cutting off her head. Tuksi, who is a qualified emergency medical technician, is believed to have used her intimate knowledge of the human body to secretly dispose of her mother's body. She reportedly planned to chop up the rest of the body, including stripping all of the meat off the bone of her left leg before she was caught. Worried neighbors raised the alarm about the House of Horrors after they were unable to contact the mother. They immediately called the police, who rushed to the address. Once at the home, officers found themselves face to face with the daughter. However, Tuksi refused to allow the cops to enter her flat. They persisted until she gave in when one of the cops questioned Tuksi about her mother, saying that her mother was not home and that she went out early. She also added, "She still hasn't come home. I don't know where she is." While she did not allow the police to enter the flat at first, she reportedly admitted that she had killed her mother after a short time, saying, "I killed my mother. She is in the bathroom." Officers were left stunned to find the butchered body with the meat completely removed from the woman's left leg, and her head was in a pot in the kitchen filled with water. Whatever you do, do not look up these crime scene photos. They are truly horrific. According to the police, the human meat that was removed from the leg was put in a bucket. Local media reported that the young woman wanted her mother to register the flat in her name and was murdered because she refused to do so. It is now revealed that Tuksi's mother, the victim, had filed a complaint against her daughter previously. She reportedly said, "My daughter is going to kill me. First she took my bracelets, then she asked for my house. She threatened me with a knife." Tuksi reportedly said in her statement to the police, "I am schizophrenic. My mother attacked me and cast a spell." Tuksi has been admitted to a mental facility after she was determined mentally ill. This case is truly disturbing, and how could anybody do this horrific act to their own mother? This is Funky Town, one of the worst cartel execution videos explained. Okay, before I begin, this is a massive trigger warning. The video begins in some sort of room and there is music playing. The first song that plays is Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses, and the camera pans to the victim tied on the floor with some plastic wire, but the torture already began before the video starts, because the victim looks like he already went through complete brutality. His hands have already been cut off and his face has been completely flayed, which means skinned. There is no skin on the victim's face at all, and his eyes have been gouged out, and there is an insane amount of blood on the floor. But the most messed up part is that the victim is hooked up to some sort of IV, and the IV is pumping him with drugs to keep him alive, and aware, making sure he felt everything happening to him. At the start of the video, they try and slit his throat with a sickle and press it against his jaw. But when the victim begins to scream, they shove a box cutter in his mouth to shut him up. His screams are absolutely gut-turning. They kept going from screaming to gurgling, from screaming to gurgling. And as the video progresses, they take the box cutter and slit his throat about 40 times. And keep in mind, the victim is still alive and aware of everything because of the drugs they are giving him to keep him alive. Also, the killers are mocking and laughing at the victim the entire time. They continue to try and slit his throat with the box cutter and were going at his neck numerous times, all while the song Funky Town was playing in the background, hence the name of the video. The killers kept having to physically restrain the victim, meaning there was still a lot of life left in him, and the amount of pain he had to be in is completely unimaginable. At one point in the video, a man had his foot on his chest holding him down, and another time they had shoved a pole in his mouth holding him in place. But the worst part about the video is towards the end, where the victim manages to loosen his arms from the restraints and immediately tries to touch his face. But remember, the victim has no face at all, no hands, and no eyes. But instinctively, the victim still tries to touch his face. It's absolutely horrifying, and the video then concludes. Keep in mind, the victim was still alive when the video ended, so who knows what else they did to him before he died. Because they were literally keeping him alive just to torture him. This victim went through so much pain and torment, and you can make an argument that nobody has ever been tortured as bad as this guy ever. I explain this based off pure memory from the first time I saw the video, because I won't dare watch it again because it's that gruesome. Everybody who saw videos like this always say Funky Town is the worst of the worst. And I honestly think that might be true, so please don't watch it and please don't search it up.
Hunt you down like Tyrannosaurus.
On the afternoon of November 2nd, 2018, as the Volusia County officers respond to a 911 call about a burglary, little did they know they were actually stepping into the most disturbing case Volusia County had ever seen.
911, where's your emergency?
I just got home and my house is completely trashed. It looks like someone broke in the side door.
Okay, how long have you been gone?
I've been gone all school day.
Are you there by yourself?
Yeah.
How old are you?
15.
I need you to take a deep breath. I'm going to ask you a few questions, okay?
Okay. My mom's car is here and it's on, and she's not home. And she was supposed to go to work today, and I can't find her.
Okay. Your mom's car is there. Is there any other way she ever get to work? Does she ever get a ride from anyone else?
No, the car is on. It's turned on.
The car is on, and you're sure she is not there?
I searched the entire place. I've been here for like 8 minutes. I've been looking.
Okay.
I can't find her.
I'm right here with you, okay? What's your name?
All right, my full name is Gregory Logan Ramos.
Is there anybody that has made any threats to your mom or to you?
No.
As the 911 operator is gathering information from 15-year-old Gregory, officers are arriving on the scene.
This guy is the real Humpty Dumpty, and his story is much darker than you think. Deep in the eerie town of Puddlebrook, Kentucky, resided Gilbert Eggman, a man plagued by misfortune. His tale took a sinister turn when he joined the construction crew. Perched atop a towering brick wall on his very first day, 3 co-workers, fueled by malevolence, sent the ladder crashing down. Gilbert's pleas for help fell on deaf ears. Desperate to rescue him, the trio resorted to a crane. But destiny had other plans. The crane, guided by an unseen force, struck Gilbert, sending him hurtling to a grim demise. The town whispered of Gilbert's curse. In the following months, darkness consumed Puddlebrook. One by one, the 3 construction workers met their untimely ends, each death shrouded in mystery. Gilbert's curse, it seemed, had unleashed its wrath upon them, becoming an urban legend in the small town.
It's right here. Yeah, because there's an arm. There's an arm, there's another arm, there's another one.
Parents have some concerns of some stuff they may have found in your room?
Yeah, I believe so.
And what would it be?
A human head and hands.
911 is John. What's the address emergency?
Hi, there is an emergency. I found something in my son's closet wrapped in a plastic bag.
Okay, what was it?
I think it's a human head.
It's a what?
I think it's a human head.
I was in his room, cleaning up, putting some things away, and he has a Rubbermaid container in his closet. And so I just kind of started digging through, going, you know, what is this mess? A plastic bag, a white plastic trash bag. And I was like, what in the world does he have in here? And I picked it up, and it was heavy. And I held it in my hands. What in the world is this? What in the world? Is it like maggots covering something? Or I don't know. I better take it in the sink. Carried it out to the sink, and it was double bagged. So I ripped open one bag, and I saw old blood. And I went, I ripped open the second bag, and I saw the bed. So I didn't open the second bag. Okay. I called my husband. Brian Jr. had already gone over his friend's house. He said, Mom, I want to go over to Kai's house.
And how did you get here?
I murdered someone.
Okay.
I've been looking. I see a large thing wrapped in a canvas.
Okay.
And I'm like, that's a homeless person. I grabbed my knife. I put on 3 layers of gloves. Took the knife. I pulled back the canvas. And I stabbed his neck.
This is one of the worst cases in human history. This is the murder of Christine Siluan. She was from the Philippines and was a volunteer in church, and she used the church every day from 4 to 6 p.m. On the day of her murder, she went to church as per her schedule, but she didn't come home after that. Her parents then started to worry, and they began searching for her with their neighbors. And what they found is absolutely horrid. They found her body in a farm where half her face was sliced like a piece of pizza, and her face was literally skinned down to her skull. Also, her brain was completely destroyed by acid. The police then started investigating, and they checked the cameras and found out that she was with a guy. The people started protesting about this case, and the case was then given to special officers. They had a lot of pressure on this. A week before this happened, she broke up with her boyfriend, so the police took him into custody. And he was proving that he was at home all day when she was murdered, but officers were completely tired of this case, and they then sentenced him as the murderer. But after a few months, a thief was caught in a store where he confessed that he murdered and raped Christine. He said he started talking to her on Facebook with a fake account, and was using fake photos of another guy that was pretty good looking. Christine fell for the guy, and she assumed that he was about 20 years old, and they started texting daily. One day, they both decided to meet up at 6 p.m. near the church she went to. But upon arriving, Christine noticed that this was not the guy she was talking to, and he was around 40-ish years old. She then refused to talk to him and tried to go back, but he held her hands extremely forcefully. He then took her far away from town and raped her repeatedly and put iron rods inside her personal organs. He then cut her face in half and then skinned her whole head down to the skull. And to make it even worse, he put acid inside of her head. The autopsy also revealed that her tongue, trachea, esophagus, parts of her neck, and her right ear were missing. The self-proclaimed killer of this case, named Renato Lanis, said that he used barber-type scissors and stabbed her 30 times on different parts of her body and skinned her face. Christine Siluan was only 16 years old, and this case is extremely haunting. There's a picture of her body that was found in the field, but Google did a really good job of not showing it and hiding it. So even if you do go looking for the picture, I don't think you're going to find it. This is one of those cases that after you get done reading it, you just feel some sort of uneasiness. I feel so bad for Christine's family, and I can't imagine finding my daughter in this state. May Christine Siluan rest in peace. This is the most disturbing Brazil cartel execution video explained. The video that I'm about to explain is 6 minutes long, and it might be the most brutal video ever. The video opens up with a brief interrogation of one of the women. In the interrogation, she pledges her allegiance to the cartel, and the video then jump cuts and shows the same woman who at this point is bloody and beaten bad. She begins begging for her life, saying, "You could do whatever you want, just not that," referring to the man pointing the gun at her head. One of the other men then says no more chances, and the man with the gun shoots the poor woman in the head. They then check on her body, and the one man says, "I don't think she's dead," which makes him take out a machete and begin hacking away at her neck. The video then jump cuts again, this time showing the second victim, and this is where the video gets extremely graphic. The men order her to place her hands on a fallen log, which she does, and is then struck in the hand by the machete. They then order her to place her hands back on the log, and they then repeat this process over and over, until the log is completely covered in bloody handprints. She then holds her bloody and mangled hands up to the camera as she tries to hold back tears. The video then jump cuts again, and it shows the same girl sitting in a muddy hole, and the man carrying the machete then takes her hand and strikes her arm numerous times with the machete. He first breaks her bone and then cuts through the flesh, severing her arm. And due to the machete being blunt, it takes several strikes. Surprisingly, the victim doesn't scream, but she rolls around in pain for a few seconds. She then pleads to the killers to leave her alone. The man with the machete then orders her to raise her leg, which she does, and he then hits her in the shin twice, which looks like it breaks the bone. She cries out mercy and says she's about to pass out. The man then orders her to lift her leg again so he could repeat the process. He then says this again, but the victim then says she can't move. And in response, the man with the machete strikes her all over her body, all while she's still pleading with the man. And after several more hits, she says it's good enough, insinuating to kill her and put her out of her misery. After a couple more strikes, the killer breaks the machete, and the video then jump cuts again, and shows the second victim lying on her stomach with the killer pulling her hair to raise her head up. The killer then strikes her in the throat several times with the machete, and instinctively she tries to block the blade with her one remaining hand. The killer continues to hack and slash at the victim's neck as she slips in and out of consciousness before he finally beheads her. A third victim is shot in the head and beheaded off camera, much like the first victim. The killer then takes all three heads by the hair and holds them up to the camera, and the video then concludes. This video is extremely graphic and terrifying, and whatever you do, please never go seeking this video, because it will definitely scar you for weeks or even forever. This world is completely brutal, and this video is just another example.
Sometimes true for stranger than fiction. The case of Richard Trenton Chase is a story which even the most depraved horror writer would struggle to create. Over the course of 4 weeks spanning across 1977 and 1978, Richard Chase took the lives of 6 innocent victims in Sacramento, California. His murders gradually progressed in violence, beginning with drive-by shootings and culminating in acts of cannibalism.
So this picture behind me is not Granny Keeley, but I'm assuming what happened to her legs was something like this. In 2020, a woman had her feet on the dashboard, the airbags went off, her femur literally dislocated from her pelvis. And as you can see on the other side of her leg that isn't dislocated, it looked like it snapped. And the crash this lady was in was not a fast crash. It was like 30 or 60 miles an hour or something like that. The speed at which the car is going doesn't matter as much. The airbags will deploy at the same speed with the same momentum. You will literally be thrown around like a rag doll to an airbag if you have your feet on the dashboard. Like, I can't even imagine the pain this woman went through. Like, on one side having your bones broken and then this one dislocated so far, I'm sure she suffered a lot more than what this x-ray is showing too. And honestly, Granny Keeley is lucky she's even alive. I feel like your knees going into your skull with an airbag, you are just lucky. Most people die from that impact. But it truly is amazing what modern medicine can actually do for these people. So once again, stop putting your feet on the dashboard. And as always, these videos are for informational purposes only.
This is one of the most sickening and disturbing cases I ever covered, and it will make any true crime fan's stomach turn. This is the case of Jennifer Dougherty. This case took place in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, which is a relatively small area. Jennifer was 30 years old and was extremely kind and sweet. She loved to dance and she trusted everyone she ever encountered. This is because she had some mental disabilities, and this disability even affected her keeping up with her peers in school. And she always got bullied and teased, but she always chose kindness over anything else. She then started going to this community center when she finally thought she met her friends. And these supposed friends were Angela, Peggy, Amber, Melvin, Ricky, and Robert. And you will soon find out why they weren't her friends. These 6 people all lived together, and Angela was 17, who was pregnant with Ricky's baby, who was 23 years old. Amber was 20, who was pregnant with Melvin Knight's baby. Peggy was 27, and Robert was 36. Now remember, Jennifer was 30 years old, but due to the mental disability she had the mental capabilities of a 12 to 14-year-old person. The 6 of them and Jennifer hung out for a while, but soon after, Angela became extremely jealous of Jennifer. This is because her boyfriend Ricky would always flirt with Jennifer when they all hung out. So Angela and Amber came up with this whole screwed up plan. On February 10th, 2010, Jennifer was invited to a sleepover with her friends, and before she left a note for her mom that said, "Have a great day at work, and I love you very much." Right when Jennifer stepped into the apartment house, she was subjected to 36 hours of extreme hell. The group went through her purse and stole money, gift cards, and her cell phone. They poured liquids into her bag, hit her head with filled soda bottles, cut her hair, painted her face with nail polish, and dumped liquids and spices on her head. They then took turns violently hitting Jennifer with a metal towel rack and crutches. Jennifer was also stripped naked, gagged, and then raped by Melvin. They even forced her to drink cooking oil, nail polish, detergent, different medications, and even urine. And keep in mind, this whole time Jennifer completely trusted them because she thought that they were all her friends. But they were literally dehumanizing her. They then continued pouring all of these things and spices on her head, and Jennifer was crying that her eyes hurt and she couldn't see. But they didn't listen and continued pouring. And after they decided they tortured her enough, they took her life. They then tied her up in Christmas lights and forced her to write a fake suicide note, essentially saying that everything that happened to her was self-inflicted. The first line reads, "I have not been feeling happy for a while now, and I also feel everybody will be better off without me." Which is just sad because that wasn't the case. Jennifer was extremely loved. Once the note was written, they got a knife and stabbed Jennifer to death. And once they knew she was dead, they tied her up in Christmas lights again, stuffed her body inside a garbage can, and dumped it in the parking lot of a middle school, where her body would be discovered by a truck driver the next day on February 11th. Even though Angela orchestrated the whole thing, she avoided the death penalty because she was 17 and a minor. But she ended up getting life without parole. Melvin got the death sentence. Ricky was also given the death penalty, and Peggy, Amber, and Robert were given 30 to 72 years in prison. This case is just so sickening and disturbing, and it stuck with me after I read it, and I feel extremely bad for Jennifer and her family. I wish nothing but the worst for those 6 people who did this to Jennifer.
This is the terrifying image of a woman cowering on her rooftop, trying to escape an intruder when he pops up behind her. What happened to this woman is like something off a horror film. It was September 2014 and Melora Rivera was at her home in California. Unfortunately for her though, she was not home alone on the day in question, although she was initially unaware of this. Melora worked as an actress and actually had a part in the Whitney Houston film Sparkle. She was in her bed when she noticed somebody in her property. He had apparently broken a panel to reach inside and unlock one of the doors. Terrified, the woman tried to escape onto the roof to alert authorities. She managed to balance up on the roof and ring 911 before, terrifyingly, he jumped up and appeared behind her. This image was captured by a passerby. Thankfully, police arrived on the scene and the man was arrested. He was identified as 29-year-old Christian Hicks. He was swiftly arrested and the woman was rescued off the roof by the fire brigade.
This is said to be one of the worst cartel videos ever, so whatever you do, don't look up the video. Before I begin, I can't stress enough how bad this video is. Whatever you do, never go searching for it. The full version of the video is 6 minutes long, and the video is shot in the nighttime in some sort of desert location. You see the victim who has been blindfolded with his hands tied behind his back, and he is also wearing a white t-shirt that spells out the cartel he belongs to. The scene seems to be lit up by the car lights, and the victim is surrounded by multiple heavily armed cartel members. They are wearing all black tactical gear and carrying high-grade weapons. One of the cartel members then begins to read a statement, and as he's doing this, the cameraman starts to move closer to the victim. After the statement is finished, the victim is forced to the ground face down in the dirt. Multiple cartel members hold him down by stepping on his back and pulling back his arms. The victim has been completely immobilized so they can carry out this awful act of violence. The victim doesn't make a sound as he awaits what's about to happen to him. After the victim has been restrained and pinned down, a cartel member carrying some kind of large knife slices a vertical cut on the back of the victim's head. He does this as a starting point to flay and scalp the victim as he is still alive. After the cut, blood starts to puddle on the dirt floor, and using the initial cut, the cartel member slices under the victim's scalp and starts to remove it from the skull. As he cuts, he pulls the skin back to ease the blade cutting underneath the scalp. After a few seconds, the back of the victim's head has been completely scalped. However, the cartel member makes sure not to cut the skin off in chunks and instead attempts to complete the scalping and flaying in one clean go. After the skin on the back of the victim's head has been severed, the cartel member then moves to removing the skin and hair from the sides of the victim's head. While doing this, he also cuts off the victim's ears. The back of the victim's skull looks like a red ball with shades of white from the victim's skull also showing. The top of the victim's head is then scalped. The victim is still alive, but somehow has yet to make a sound. Not even one scream. The victim is then turned over on his back, and as this is happening, a cartel member puts his boot on his chest to stop him from moving, and at this point, the victim, who is still conscious, says his first words, and despite the awful and intense pain he must have been going through, he tells the cartel member to simply stop stepping on his chest in a very calm manner. But as he's lying on his back, a cartel member then flays the skin off of his face. He pulls the skin that has already been flayed and starts to cut down from the victim's forehead. And as the blade slices under the skin, you hear a tearing type sound, which is just awful. After about 20 seconds, the cartel member completes the flaying, but he realizes he missed a few pieces of skin on the victim's cheek. He then goes back and cuts the remaining skin off. The victim also has his nose cut off, and what is left of the victim is a horrific sight. His head looks like a red skull, and due to the lack of skin, it makes his teeth and eyes way more prominent. The detached scalp and face is then placed on the victim's chest, and the cartel member then finishes off the victim by cutting deep into his throat, and it appears to finally kill the victim. The cartel member then cuts off his tongue and takes off his shirt. He then plunges the knife deep into the victim's chest and cuts vertically, exposing all of his organs. The victim at this point has lost so much blood that it doesn't even cause bleeding. The cartel member then reaches into the victim's chest and cuts out his heart. The heart is still beating, and he then holds it up to the camera. The cartel member then kneels down next to the deceased victim as the camera focuses on the still beating heart. The last 2 minutes of the video is the cartel member still holding the beating heart in complete silence. Nobody talks, and all you hear is the wind blowing until the heart stops beating and the video concludes. Whatever you do, please don't go searching for this video. Just when you think you've seen it all, a video like this surfaces. I can't stress enough how bad this video actually is. It's just crazy knowing that this is happening in real time to real people, and it's just awful knowing that stuff like this happens on a daily basis.
However, coined the phrase, "You can't make this stuff up," might have known the story of real-life boogeyman, Albert Fish. A slight, elderly man with grey hair, no one suspected the kindly single father of being sadistic child murderer and cannibal.
This is said to be one of the worst cartel videos ever, so whatever you do, don't look up the video. Before I begin, I can't stress enough how bad this video is. Whatever you do, never go searching for it. The full version of the video is 6 minutes long, and the video is shot in the nighttime in some sort of desert location. You see the victim, who has been blindfolded with his hands tied behind his back, and he is also wearing a white t-shirt that spells out the cartel he belongs to. The scene seems to be lit up by the car lights, and the victim is surrounded by multiple heavily armed cartel members. They are wearing all black tactical gear and carrying high-grade weapons. One of the cartel members then begins to read a statement, and as he's doing this, the cameraman starts to move closer to the victim. After the statement is finished, the victim is forced to the ground face down in the dirt. Multiple cartel members hold him down by stepping on his back and pulling back his arms. The victim has been completely immobilized so they can carry out this awful act of violence. The victim doesn't make a sound as he awaits what's about to happen to him. After the victim has been restrained and pinned down, a cartel member carrying some kind of large knife slices a vertical cut on the back of the victim's head. He does this as a starting point to flay and scalp the victim as he is still alive. After the cut, blood starts to puddle on the dirt floor, and using the initial cut, the cartel member slices under the victim's scalp and starts to remove it from the skull. As he cuts, he pulls the skin back to ease the blade cutting underneath the scalp. After a few seconds, the back of the victim's head has been completely scalped. However, the cartel member makes sure not to cut the skin off in chunks and instead attempts to complete the scalping and flaying in one clean go. After the skin on the back of the victim's head has been severed, the cartel member then moves to removing the skin and hair from the sides of the victim's head. While doing this, he also cuts off the victim's ears. The back of the victim's skull looks like a red ball with shades of white from the victim's skull also showing. The top of the victim's head is then scalped. The victim is still alive, but somehow has yet to make a sound. Not even one scream. The victim is then turned over on his back, and as this is happening, a cartel member puts his boot on his chest to stop him from moving, and at this point, the victim, who is still conscious, says his first words, and despite the awful and intense pain he must have been going through, he tells the cartel member to simply stop stepping on his chest in a very calm manner. But as he's lying on his back, a cartel member then flays the skin off of his face. He pulls the skin that has already been flayed and starts to cut down from the victim's forehead. And as the blade slices under the skin, you hear a tearing type sound, which is just awful. After about 20 seconds, the cartel member completes the flaying, but he realizes he missed a few pieces of skin on the victim's cheek. He then goes back and cuts the remaining skin off. The victim also has his nose cut off, and what is left of the victim is a horrific sight. His head looks like a red skull, and due to the lack of skin, it makes his teeth and eyes way more prominent. The detached scalp and face is then placed on the victim's chest, and the cartel member then finishes off the victim by cutting deep into his throat, and it appears to finally kill the victim. The cartel member then cuts off his tongue and takes off his shirt. He then plunges the knife deep into the victim's chest and cuts vertically, exposing all of his organs. The victim at this point has lost so much blood that it doesn't even cause bleeding. The cartel member then reaches into the victim's chest and cuts out his heart. The heart is still beating, and he then holds it up to the camera. The cartel member then kneels down next to the deceased victim as the camera focuses on the still beating heart. The last 2 minutes of the video is the cartel member still holding the beating heart in complete silence. Nobody talks, and all you hear is the wind blowing until the heart stops beating and the video concludes. Whatever you do, please don't go searching for this video. Just when you think you've seen it all, a video like this surfaces. I can't stress enough how bad this video actually is. It's just crazy knowing that this is happening in real time to real people, and it's just awful knowing that stuff like this happens on a daily basis.